$55 billion. That's what phishing and social engineering have drained from real companies since 2013, and not $1 of it needed malware. Social engineering doesn't attack the computer. It attacks the person reading the screen. And here's the part that should stick with you. For this exam and for the day a real one lands in your inbox, underneath every attack in Objective 2.2 sits the same handful of psychological levers. And once you can name the lever, you can feel the con coming.
Hey everyone, Kai here, and the reason Objective 2.2 puts these human attack vectors first is one brutal fact. You can't patch a person. Think about the asymmetry for a second. A server gets a fix and the hole closes for good. A helpful human is a hole that reopens every single morning the moment they sit down and open the inbox. There's no permanent patch to ship.
And I want to anchor why this carries real weight on exam day. Domain 2 is 22% of the test, the second largest slice, and CompTIA's own objective list puts the human attacks right at the front of it. They test it because in the real world, it's the single most common way a breach actually begins.
Hi all, I'm Leo, and here's the frame that actually predicts the answers. Strip the jargon off every one of these attacks, and each pulls a psychological lever. CompTIA names 7 of them, and they're the whole game. Let me put them on the board so they stop being a vocabulary list and start being a map you can read a scenario against. The 7 are authority, urgency, scarcity, and intimidation. Then consensus, familiarity, and trust. Authority is the fake boss. Urgency is the ticking clock. Scarcity is the offer that expires. Intimidation is the naked threat.
And the other 3 are the soft ones, which is exactly what makes them dangerous. Consensus is everyone else already did this. Familiarity is the friendly name you recognize. Trust is the brand you would never think to question.
So when a scenario question describes the bait, name the lever it's pulling first, and the right answer usually falls straight out of the question before you even read the options.
And these aren't academic. Picture Priya, a brand new hire in accounts payable, 3 days on the job. A text lands, supposedly from the chief executive, saying he is stuck in a board meeting and needs 4 gift cards bought right now. That one message pulls authority, urgency, and familiarity at the same time.
And the soft levers pull just as hard once you spot them. Consensus is the follow-up line that says the whole finance team already signed off, so Priya is the only holdout. Scarcity is the promo that expires in 10 minutes. Each one borrows a feeling so her logic never gets a turn.
And here's the exam habit that pays off. When a scenario stacks 2 or 3 of these levers at once, the stacking is itself the signal. A real request from your own boss doesn't usually need to be urgent, secret, and expiring all at the same time. The pressure is the tell.
Notice the target selection too, because it's never random. Priya gets hit precisely because she doesn't yet know it's strange for an executive to text her. The attacker reads the org chart off a networking site and picks the person least likely to push back. That's reconnaissance, not luck.
So resisting feels rude, which is the whole trick. The target isn't careless at all. They're being polite under manufactured pressure, and politeness is the lever the attacker is really pulling. Every one of these cons is engineered so that doing the safe thing, pausing to verify, feels like being difficult and slow in front of the boss.
The research on who actually clicks keeps landing on the same uncomfortable finding. It's rarely the careless person. It's the busy, conscientious one who saw a note marked urgent from a name they recognized and helpfully acted before they had a second to think.
So the mistake is structural, not personal. The control that fails is the human one, every time, and no amount of money spent on the perimeter buys it back. One polite click can undo $1 million stack of defenses. That's why blaming the victim never fixes anything. The fix is teaching the whole team to recognize the shape of the manipulation before they react to it. But here's the good news, and the whole promise of this episode. Defense against this entire class is recognition. Every one of these attacks leaves a tell. A mismatched address, a domain off by one letter, a request that quietly skips the normal process. Learn to see the tells, and you stop being the statistic. Before we open it up, there's a question that shows up under almost every video anyone makes on this topic. Kim, you've been sitting on it. Put it to the room.
Gladly, and it's the honest one. If smart, careful people fall for these, how am I supposed to spot the one aimed at me? Everything we cover today is built to answer exactly that.
Perfect thing to build on. Coming up, we sort the whole phishing family into one clean tree. Then take a real spoofed email and label every red flag in it, one by one. Once you can name the attack, you're already halfway to catching it.
This whole family of attacks is really one trick wearing different costumes. The trick never changes. Pretend to be someone the target already trusts, then ask for the thing you want before they get a moment to verify. And CompTIA wants you to sort that one trick along two axes. What channel did it arrive on and how targeted was it? Nail those two and you can label any scenario they throw at you. Let me draw the tree so it's one picture, not a glossary. Start at the root. Phishing is the broad email cast, thousands of messages at once for almost no effort, hoping a few bite. Everything else is just that root narrowed down or moved to a new channel.
The two side branches are the channel swaps. Move the same con to a live phone call and it becomes vishing, voice phishing. Move it to a text message and it becomes smishing, the SMS version. Same psychology, different pipe. The channel isn't just a detail though. It changes which defenses even exist. A phone call has no spam filter in front of it, and a text on your phone dodges the corporate mail gateway entirely, so the attacker moves to voice or SMS precisely because the technical guardrails you rely on at your desk are simply not there.
The everyday examples make these stick. Phishing is the call claiming to be your bank's fraud department, asking you to read back a code they just texted you. But that code is the real bank's login prompt, so you're handing your account straight to a stranger who is logging in at that exact second. Smishing is the "your package is held, click to reschedule" text you've all gotten. And I'd put money on the next channel being the one already in your pocket. Phishing through a QR code. The code hides the real destination from your eye, so you scan it and land somewhere you would never have typed. Treat a random QR code exactly like a random link.
Now follow the main trunk down because that's where the targeting tightens. A generic blast to anyone is plain phishing. Aim it at one specific person, using their real name and their boss and their live projects, and it becomes spear phishing. And when the spear is aimed at a senior executive, the big fish with wire authority, CompTIA calls that whaling. Narrower target, far higher payoff. The exam loves to test that one word.
At the very bottom of that trunk sits the attack that costs the most while using the least technology. Business Email Compromise, BEC. No attachment, no malicious link. There's simply nothing dangerous in the message for a security filter to detect. It's just a plain, polite email that appears to come from the chief executive or a known vendor saying, "Please wire the payment to this updated account." That's the entire weapon.
Let me make that concrete because it's exactly how a scenario question gets framed. Picture Marcus, a controller at a mid-sized construction firm. He gets an email from a longtime supplier with a routine invoice and one line added. "We've changed banks, please send payment to the new account." The logo is right and the invoice number is real. The supplier's name checks out too because that supplier's mailbox was genuinely hacked. So Marcus pays it and the money is gone in minutes. That's textbook BEC, and notice there's not one thing in it for an antivirus to flag. The email is technically legitimate. Only the request inside it's a lie.
The defense for every version is one move. Verify out of band. Call the executive or the vendor on a number you already had, never one printed in the email, and confirm before any money moves. It feels slow in the moment, but it's the single control that turns a six-figure loss into a 30-second phone call.
This is that $55 billion category from the top of the show. In 2024 alone, the FBI logged over 21,000 of these complaints, with losses near $2.7 billion, the second costliest crime they track. No malware required.
The glue holding any of these together is pretexting. The pretext is the believable backstory. I'm calling from the help desk about your password reset. I'm the new accounts payable manager, and our vendor just changed banks. The story lowers the guard before the real ask ever lands.
Watch the exam wording here, because this is a classic trap. The split is clean. Pretexting is the invented scenario. Impersonation is pretending to be a specific real person or brand. They travel together, but the question tells you which to pick. If it stresses the made-up story, the answer is pretexting. If it stresses pretending to be a known identity, the answer is impersonation. One word in the stem decides it.
Kim has the question the panel keeps circling, and it teed up the whole next scene. Kim, go ahead.
Right, here it's if BEC has no malware and no bad link, what signal do we actually catch it on? That's exactly what the next two scenes are built to answer.
Let me pause for just a second, because this genuinely helps. If you are getting value here, hit that like button, then subscribe and ring the bell. It costs you nothing, and it is the single biggest thing that keeps these videos coming. So Kim asked the right question. If the body of the email is a perfect costume, where does the truth show? Let me answer with a real one, pulled straight from a security training inbox. This is a sanitized phishing email, the kind that lands in real inboxes every single day. I want you to stop reading it like a victim and start reading it like an analyst. There are 6 tells in this one frame, and once you see them, you can't unsee them.
Look at the very top. The brand inside the message says Bank of America, but the actual sender address is authenticationmail@trust.ameribank7.com. That's the whole con in one line. The logo says one thing, the domain says another. A real bank sends from its own domain, full stop. The moment the brand in the body and the domain in the address disagree, you're done. You don't need to read another word.
Now drop to the greeting. Dear account holder, your actual bank knows your name, your account number, your whole history. So a generic greeting is the tell that this went to 10,000 people at once and you were just one address on a list. Personalization costs the attacker effort, which means a blast campaign skips it every time.
Read the body next, because this is the lever scene from earlier made real. A recent login from a new device, 4 transactions since your last login, reset your password immediately. That's urgency and fear, stacked, engineered to make your heart rate do the thinking instead of your eyes. Every word of it exists to push you toward one thing. Reset your password with this link, pointing at that same fake Ameribank domain. The branding is Bank of America, but the link is a stranger's server, so everything visual says trust, while the destination says trap.
That fake domain has a real name on the exam. This is Typosquatting, a domain registered to look almost right. Ameribank7 instead of the real bank, a number swapped in for a letter, a dash added, the wrong ending. It reads correct at a glance, which is the entire point.
There's a quick way to call the bluff that CompTIA wants you to know. A whois lookup shows when a domain was registered and by whom. A real bank's domain is decades old with a corporate owner on file, but a Typosquat is usually days old, with the owner hidden behind a privacy shield. A 9-day-old bank doesn't exist.
The close cousin sitting right next to Typosquatting is brand impersonation. Typosquatting is the address being subtly wrong. Brand impersonation is everything else being exactly right. The logo and the colors and the footer all copied to sell the lie. The two almost always arrive together, which is what makes the pair so convincing.
Hold on, because the funniest tell is the one people skip right past.
Go ahead, you've been grinning at it. Call it out.
Read the signature. It says Bank America, not Bank of America. And up in the body, new device is spelled DIVICE. A real bank ships email past a marketing team and a legal team. These slips are the loose seams on a cheap costume.
And that's the muscle to build. Don't grade the email on how official it feels, grade it on 6 checks. The sender domain and the greeting and the urgency. The link and the spelling and whether it quietly breaks your normal process. When 3 of those flags stack up like they do here, it's a phish with no further analysis needed.
And one fair question people ask. Some of these are getting flawless now, perfect grammar, and a real stolen logo. Kim, you've been chewing on that one. Ask it.
Yes, and it's the uncomfortable one. If the next Phish has perfect spelling and a perfect logo, what's left to catch it on? Hold that, because the answer isn't in the body at all. It lives in the part the attacker can't fully fake.
That's the perfect handoff. The body is theater. The headers are evidence. Next scene, we open the raw source in a terminal and find the line that ends the argument. The body is what the attacker wants you to see. The headers are the evidence they couldn't fully fake. Let me set this up the way you would actually do it in a security operations seat and keep the whole series framing in mind. Everything here runs in an isolated lab on a sample message, so you understand the mechanics well enough to defend against them. Let me pull the raw source of that suspicious email and walk it line by line.
And so everyone can find this. In most mail clients, it's an option called View Source, Show Original, or View Message Headers. It's not hidden. It's just the part people scroll past their entire career without opening. But it's the single most reliable place to confirm a spoof because the attacker controls what you read and the mail servers control what gets stamped here.
Headers are where the lie shows. Every mail server stamps its own line as the message travels, so the headers become a paper trail the sender doesn't fully control. Watch the two fields that are supposed to match and don't. There and that mismatch is a top spoof indicator. The visible from says Dana Reed, your chief financial officer, at your own company domain. But the return path, the real envelope sender, is secure-mail247.ru. Those two fields are completely independent. A spoofer sets the from line to literally any name and address they want because nothing forces it to match the server that actually sent the message. That gap is the whole tell.
And look at the reply to. Even if you reply to what looks like your own chief financial officer, your answer routes straight to that foreign domain. That's the trapdoor. The display name is pure theater. The address fields are the receipt.
Now read the received lines because exam questions absolutely love these. They stack newest on top and oldest on the bottom because each server inserts its line above the last one as the message passes through. So you read them from the bottom up to trace the real origin, and the very bottom hop here's that .ru server, not anything inside your company. The message was never near your building.
The line that ends the whole argument is the authentication results. Reading SPF fail, DKIM none, DMARC fail. Let me say what each one does, because 2.2 and 4.5 both lean on these three.
SPF Sender Policy Framework checks whether the sending server is even allowed to send mail for that envelope domain. DKIM adds a cryptographic signature that proves the message body wasn't altered in transit. DMARC is the policy that ties them together, checking that the visible from actually aligns with what passed authentication.
Here's the exam grade way to hold the division of labor. SPF asks, did this come from an authorized server? DKIM asks, was this message tampered with? DMARC asks, what do we do if those fail, quarantine it, or reject it? All three failed at once here, so that's your spoof, confirmed in writing.
That last part is worth memorizing because the exam tests the action, not just the acronym. A domain owner publishes a DMARC policy that says one of three things. None just watches and reports. Quarantine sends the failures to spam, and reject refuses the message at the door so it never reaches a human at all.
A policy of reject is the one that actually stops the spoof. The catch is that plenty of real companies still run DMARC on none, watching the failures roll in without blocking a single one. A control you never enforce isn't a control, it's a logbook.
I want a voice who does exactly this header analysis all day. A community question came in asking what a real analyst checks first. So let me dial in Harlow, who knows email authentication cold. Harlow, you read these headers for a living. What's the first thing your eyes go to?
Honestly, the authentication results line before anything else. If SPF and DMARC both fail on a message claiming to be internal, that's almost always game over right there. I don't even need to read the body yet. And the one I wish more people checked is the reply to. Attackers leave the from looking clean to pass a glance, then quietly redirect the conversation through reply to. A reply to on a different domain than the from on a money request is a 5-second catch that saves a fortune.
But what about a real account that got hijacked, where auth passes?
Fair, and that's the hard case. When the real account is compromised, authentication passes and the headers go quiet. That's exactly where the human control takes over. The content tell, an out-of-pattern wire request, plus calling on a number you already had, is what catches the cases the headers can't. One more thing worth teaching a whole team. Look for the sudden change in tone or timing. A vendor who has invoiced you the same way for years doesn't abruptly demand a same-day wire to a brand new account. When the relationship history and the requests stop matching, that gap is a signal no header will ever show you, so you learn to trust the pattern break as hard as you trust the authentication line.
That's the honest answer, thank you, Harlow. So the defense in this scene collapses to one habit. Don't trust the display name, trust the headers. And when the headers pass, trust the process. The accounts payable clerk who checks both is the person who saves the company the wire.
Last group, and these are the quiet ones, the attacks that don't even email you directly. Start with the watering hole. Instead of chasing the target, the attacker poisons a website the target already visits and trusts, then simply waits.
The name comes straight from nature, and that's exactly how it works. A predator doesn't chase every animal across the plain. It poisons the watering hole and waits for the whole herd to come and drink. Compromise the industry forum or the vendor portal a whole sector relies on, and the victims deliver themselves.
And notice how it flips the whole model. Normal phishing pushes bait out to many inboxes and hopes. The watering hole sets one trap on trusted ground and lets the target walk in. That's exactly why it works against a hardened, suspicious target.
It's a documented nation-state tactic, not a hypothetical. In 2013, attackers compromised the United States Department of Labor website and planted an Internet Explorer 0-day on the pages about radiation exposure because the visitors to those pages were exactly the federal nuclear program employees they wanted. They didn't phish anyone. They poisoned the page their targets already trusted and waited. The most famous social engineering breach of the last decade proves the whole chapter at once. In July 2020, attackers called Twitter employees on the phone, posing as the company's own IT help desk, claiming to fix a virtual private network issue. That's phishing plus pretexting plus a lookalike login page all in one call.
The payoff is the part that should stay with you. Those calls handed over employee credentials, then the internal admin tools. The attackers reached 130 accounts, tweeted from 45 of them, including some of the biggest names alive, and ran a Bitcoin scam. No malware, just phone calls and a fake page.
Now the delivery mechanism CompTIA keeps testing, the macro lure. This is the document that opens and immediately begs you to click Enable Content. Let me pull it apart, because once you see how it works, the fear turns into recognition. Here's the concept in a lab, framed defensively. The attachment carries a tiny embedded script, a macro, that does absolutely nothing until you grant it permission. That yellow Enable Content banner is the entire attack surface. See how the whole thing hinges on one click. The macro runs only after the user enables content, so without that click there's nothing. That's why the entire lure is built to manufacture a reason to click, a document that claims to be a protected invoice or an encrypted payslip that only displays once you enable editing. The fake instruction is the attack, not the file.
That's right, and it's a great exam fact. Microsoft now blocks macros by default in any file that arrived from the internet using the mark of the web flag. That single change is exactly why attackers had to shift to other lure file types, like password-protected zip files and disk image files, chosen to slip around the block.
The last pair on 2.2 is the one CompTIA added for the modern threat landscape: misinformation and disinformation. The entire distinction lives in one word: intent. Misinformation is false information spread by someone who genuinely believes it's true. Disinformation is false information spread deliberately to deceive, often to manipulate a decision or erode trust on purpose. Same false claim, but the opposite intent, and that intent is the whole answer the exam wants.
So for the exam, anchor on intent. If the spreader was simply wrong, it's misinformation. If the spreader knew and weaponized it anyway, that's disinformation. Both count as genuine human vector threats now, because a believable false narrative can move money and behavior as effectively as any phishing email.
So pull it all together, because this is the one rule that covers every attack today. Each one pulled a human lever, and each one left a tell you can learn to see. The mismatched header, the lookalike domain, the enable content banner, the phone call that broke the normal process.
Recognition is the patch. The reason security awareness training shows up again in Domain 5 is that it's the only real fix for this whole class. You can't install it, you have to teach it, but it measurably works. Run a phishing simulation, coach the people who click, and the click rate drops over time.
There's one habit that turns every employee into a censor: the report phish button. When one person reports a suspicious email, the security team can pull that same message from everyone else's inbox before they open it. So one careful click protects the whole company, which is why the report button matters more than the delete key.
So carry one thing home. Forget the long taxonomy for a second, and remember this. Trust the headers, not the display name. The person who reports a phish is worth more than the person who simply didn't click, because they warned everyone else. Trained, you're the strongest censor in the building. Here's the one thing to carry out of Objective 2.2. Every social engineering attack hacks a human lever, and everyone leaves a tell. The mismatched header, the lookalike domain, the document begging for one click.
For the exam, drill the vocabulary pairs that trip people: pretexting versus impersonation, the story versus the identity, misinformation versus disinformation, the intent switch. Which word the question stresses decides the answer.
Tonight you can catch one yourself. Open a suspicious message, read the headers, check the reply to. The first time you spot a real phish in the wild, this whole objective becomes a reflex you keep for good.
So hit like and subscribe, because wait until you see the next one, where one line typed into a login box walks straight past the password. Free practice questions for this objective live at certs.professorerica.com.
And here's the one only you can answer. What's the most convincing phishing attempt that ever hit your inbox, and the tiny detail that gave it away? Tell us in the comments.
This is River. Thanks for watching and signing off.